And when you think of the executive champion and the role that that person's going to play, I'm a huge baseball fan, so a lot of my metaphors or examples tend to be baseball related. So apologies if you're not a baseball fan, but I think you'll follow this anyway. If you've ever seen the movie Bull Durham, you know that the central relationship to the movie is the relationship between Crash Davis, the sort of grizzled veteran catcher who comes in, and it's his job to mentor this young pitcher with a great arm and lots of potential, but guy's kind of a wild man. He doesn't really know how to be professional. He doesn't really know how to how to conduct himself in such a way that he's able to live up to his promise and his talent. And over the course of the movie, this catcher teaches him about the game, teaches him about life, helps make him successful for the organization. But even though the catcher, Crash Davis, is the sort of central character of the movie, his success is really enabled by the manager of the team, Joe Riggins. Joe doesn't get involved in the catcher-pitcher relationship. He doesn't go in there and start meddling or getting his nose into it. He knows enough to sort of let the catcher do his job. But the manager was the one who brought the catcher into the organization in the first place and told him it's your job to mentor this guy along, told him it's your job to sort of build him up. He gives him the resources that he needs to help the kid out, and he's always looking out for the catcher and enabling him to do what he needs to do. And that, when you apply it to business, is sort of the role of the executive champion. They're not directly involved with social media. They're not going to be the one who's out in the networks. They're not going to be out on Twitter necessarily or Facebook and interacting with everybody. But this executive champion is the one who brings in somebody for social media, is the one who is enabling and is being there behind the scenes to sort of make sure everything goes smoothly, make sure that everybody has the support that they need to make social go well. The characteristics or the things that you want to look for in an executive champion, first they have to have credible authority. If they're not high enough in the food chain where, if I say, you know what, in the organization, social belongs to me, I'm going to hire the person, I'm going to offer resources, and it's going to be in my department, or I'm going to be the one who makes this successful. If that person's in the middle of the management chain, or if they're not taken seriously enough in the organization, you're going to have a problem and you'll end up with turf wars. The person has to be high enough up to have credible authority when they say they're going to take the lead on this. They need to be able to credibly moderate disputes. It's a fact that in big organizations or small ones, people aren't going to see eye to eye. People aren't going to necessarily agree on the right thing to do, even when you have a social media expert involved. So this person has to be, when nothing can be settled at the working team level, this person has to have the credibility to moderate disputes. He or she needs to be able to go to the C-suites and sell social media, explain, well, we all know resources are finite, so if we're spending money on a social program, that means we can't spend it on somewhere else. Here's why. Here's what makes sense. Here's what we're doing and why you should get behind it. This person has to be able to either provide budget out of their own funds or raise budget from across the company. It's a big myth of social media that social media is free. It's not. It's very cost effective, but you still need to be able to apply resources. You still need to be able to apply people to it, and this executive champion is the one behind the scenes making sure that there's money and people to get this done well. This person's also sort of connecting everybody from a social standpoint in with the larger strategy of the company, whether it's communications or marketing. What are we really trying to do, and how does social help us get that done? If the executive champion isn't talking to the social media lead and doesn't let that social media lead know sort of, this is what's coming, this is what we're trying to accomplish, here's the newest news that's coming out of us, how do we handle this in social? That executive champion is going to be the person who knows what's coming because they're high enough up in the company, and it's her job or his job to push that down to the social media team, and that, of course, requires a very strong relationship with the social media evangelist. The next thing that you want to do is establish consensus and have clear lines of authority around who owns social media and which department sort of takes the lead. We all know at this stage social media is very, very hot. It's the big buzzword. It's what everybody is trying to get into. And in lots of organizations, that usually means multiple parts of the organization, multiple departments think that they should own it. The problem with turf wars, if you don't have those clear lines of authority, is that you can get a very inconsistent online presence. You might possibly have multiple Twitter feeds or multiple Facebook pages coming up. You might have different messages going out from the marketing department, the communications department, and customer service doesn't seem to be integrated with any of that. that inconsistent presence and that inconsistent personality can confuse the audience and not make them not aware of who's really saying what or what the brand is really trying to stand for. These internal turf wars also just drain your attention and your energy. You can't really focus on building a following on Facebook or building a good Twitter program that generates revenue for you if you're spending all your time in internal meetings fighting over who's supposed to have the lead and who's not supposed to be doing what without permission. It's just a drain of attention, and you can't really afford that if you're trying to build a successful program. And this also leads to staff frustration and burnout. Nobody likes to feel that their position is constantly under threat or under question. Nobody likes to be in a situation where there's tension and arguments every day. You'll start losing good people if you're not able to sort of cut off some of this frustration. So here's the big one. Everybody always wants to know, all right, so then who should own social media? Who does this belong to? And there are lots of parts of the organization that will claim ownership to it. Public relations, of course, and communications will argue that, look, we're used to two-way dialogue with reporters. We're used to being asked questions. We're used to being questioned and having them kind of call shenanigans on us and having to respond to that. So that these channels sort of lend themselves to our skill set. Marketing people will turn and go, but that's all great, but you don't necessarily know the product. You don't have the brand messages. You don't know who our target audience is. We have all that information. You going out and having all this purposeless dialogue that doesn't further the brand goals isn't as effective as we'd like it to be. You get customer service departments going, well, this is all really about involving yourself in talking to customers and involving yourself with them and trying to improve their experience with us, so we should lead this. You get your web development team that wants to, a lot of cases wants to have a piece of the action. You get lawyers in HR saying, whoa, don't do anything without us because there are liabilities and ramifications from both a personnel standpoint and a legal standpoint. So there are all these different pieces of the organization that want a piece of social media, and this pretty much happens across the board. I've never seen a big organization that doesn't have multiple claims to leadership. Now, when I'm asked who do I really think out of all of these should own social media, I acknowledge I have a bias. I'm a communications guy. I've always been a communications guy. So I do tend to think that public relations or communications, for the most part, in most circumstances, is best equipped because of that dialogue and because of how used they are to being questioned, to being able to have to think on their feet and come up with quick answers when they're being challenged. However, before anybody who's on the phone who belongs to communications or PR, before you start doing a victory dance, the reality is lead does not mean exclusive. Every single one of those departments that we talked about has to be involved in the development of the social media program. Any organization, any piece of the business, whether PR or marketing or customer service or the web team, anybody who tries to go it alone and thinks that they're going to set the strategy without taking input from everybody else is going to hamstring the organization. Whether you're in a big company, small company, nonprofit, for-profit, all those organizations, all those departments, all those individuals have to be involved in the development of the social media program, have to have their needs met by what you're developing. If you don't do that, you're not going to be ultimately successful. The reality is no other business strategy or business department executes independently, and social shouldn't either. You don't have big product announcements without getting marketing, advertising, PR, customer service. You don't do that without getting everybody else involved. You shouldn't do it with social either. You have to have regular contact and regular collaboration. When I was at General Motors, we had what we called the Social Club, and it was a weekly meeting of all of those departments where we would talk not only about developments in the industry and what was coming from a social standpoint, new tools, new platforms, et cetera, but what is each part of the business doing? What kind of strategy can we put together collectively together to make this all work and to be smooth about it? And I really think that kind of collaboration is necessary. What you want to do, though, is guard actively against development of box-checking mentality. It's just sort of, okay, we ran this by the social council, we ran this past everybody, and everyone sort of checked the box. This group should be very active in challenging each other and questioning things and wondering if, well, gosh, the strategy that we put together 4 months ago, is it still working? Is it still effective? Should we revisit? Don't get into box-checking. Recognize that constant challenge and that constant dialogue back and forth is actually healthy for the organization, and it doesn't mean anybody's challenging leadership. It doesn't mean that anybody's making a power play. It means that they're doing what they're supposed to do.